Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Quixotic topic. As always, I'm your host, Daquan Peel, and today I'm joined by.
Mateo Smith.
And today, me and Mateo are going to be talking about his clothing brand and also a little bit of 3D modeling and mod work. And so, Mateo, I think first things first, tell me about your clothing brand. Give me like the 30-second elevator speech.
My clothing brand is 4C, like the hair type. It's supposed to be a clothing brand focused around art of black women in late 90s to early 2000s 3D artwork. I really wanted to do that sort of style for my clothing brand because you never see any black women in old like video game renders or any of the old artwork of the, late 90s, early 2000s that was 3D.
Mhm.
Mostly just white people and sometimes Asian people.
Yeah, typically, yeah. African Americans and African American women specifically has always been in some way or another an underrepresented minority, especially in fashion. I, of course, have very limited scope on the fashion world in general. I always see kind of those like Met Gala or whatever, and I have like celebrities dressed up in something like completely just outlandish, which I think would make a lot of people kind of be turned down from the idea of fashion, which makes your pursuits and representation definitely very interesting and familiar, definitely. Especially seeing as I grew up on a lot of old video games. I think my first one was like Sonic 2 on the PlayStation 2. It was a port, but um, kind of with your clothing brand, have you kind of been interested in getting like live models for like as in like model in the genuine sense, like a fashion model for your work, or do you mainly take from just inspiration? Is it like more of an artwork feel or
Well, do you mean live models for modeling my pieces or having live models that I base my pieces on?
both?
Oh, okay. In terms of having models that base my pieces on, I am very interested in that and I have used it sometimes. A lot of my like earlier artworks were based off of random people like Janelle Monáe or Saweetie, but I've gone into using some of my friends at A&T as reference models for some of my shirts. And the one I'm wearing right now you can't see is actually a model of um, a fellow NCAT 24er who decided to be my model for a art piece I made for an unrelated art show. And as far as having live models to model my brand, I am looking into that, although I need to restock on shirts before I can do that, unfortunately.
Hmm. For the audience, NCAT 24, of course, being the 2024 graduating class of the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Bit of a mouthful, truth be told. But going into kind of inventory, what are some of the like challenges that have come up with when it comes to like running a clothing brand?
Well, the biggest challenge is definitely trying to find a good enough or trying to balance the price with the quality of the shirts. Because all my shirts are 3D renders. Like, you're never going to get an SVG out of a 3D render with like thousands of colors. And while you could get really nice, clean designs or free design, I mean, cheaper designs, maybe with screen printing or something with a lot less colors where you can just have multiple layers of different colors. Every shirt I make has to be DTG printed because of the amount of colors in it, direct to garment, instead of using just several screens and like masking, but for shirts.
Hmm.
So it's been quite a struggle to find a good DTG printing service I can use because they're a lot rarer than screen printing services and they can usually be of questionable quality.
Mm.
Especially the online vendors, where you can set up your own store on their website. They usually give you very, very low quality DTG prints that look like they've been washed and dried maybe 7 times in some industrial washer
Hmm.
that costs like 98 cents or something. But I have found better printers in this Greensboro area. I'm looking into them, but I'm still trying to figure out a good, reliable vendor I can use. I've made some pretty good shirts so far and sold them. But definitely the big struggle is trying to figure out what printing service I can use that I can make good shirts that are good quality that people would legitimately want to buy, but keep them like under $50 because no one's doing that.
Yeah. I mean, for $50, that's like a full tank of gas for me.
Yeah.
So, um, when it comes to like trying to find DTG, direct to garment printing, how, I guess you also have to balance the cost between how much it would be to just get a machine of your own, which comes with its whole other like litany of things, right? Because you have to
Yes.
figure out where to put it.
Yes.
And so, when it comes to, have you thought about like, I guess also the cost benefit estimate of having like those shirts be printed in somewhere that's like not in the Greensboro area, like outsourcing to somewhere that's maybe farther out in the States?
I have considered that, though it's been very difficult finding a very finding a reputable printer
Hmm.
because a lot of people, advertising the best shirts and you get them and they're like faded colors or the wrong colors or they just it looks like there's hair or just little flecks of the shirt in the print
Mm.
or it looks like it looks like you can see the imprint of the printer coming down on the shirt. There's
Oh
that little
wow.
crease that you can't get rid of.
How I guess like you had to kind of drum up a like vetting process for these shirts, right? Or I'm sorry, not shirts, the DTG sites. Kind of what are some of the like common traps that a lot of, I guess, fledgling shirt producers, artists, I guess, the artist is a better term, um, the artist could possibly fall into? If you had to like tell somebody like, okay, don't, if you see this as a red flag, what would you say?
Oh, biggest common red flags are just knowing what t-shirt you need to buy to get printed on. You definitely want to go as much cotton as possible, not go for the cheapest option because the cheapest option is usually a poly blend, which when printed on will have a really bad crease or like it might burn or the print will look bad or it'll be really like hard on the shirt. Whereas on a 100% cotton shirt, it feels like it's not even there.
Hmm.
And another thing is definitely look into if a company is fairly big, that may mean that it's not good.
Mm.
So definitely, check Little Better reviews or comparisons on Imgur for the actual quality comparisons of the shirt and quality, I don't know the word.
Quality assurance?
Yeah, or investigations
Mm,
into the
yeah.
quality of the shirts.
Word.
And I think the biggest thing that I really wish I knew before I printed my first shirts was that DTG printing generally or produces faded colors in the final print. So you're probably going to want to saturate your print by at least 15%
Mm.
so that the colors you want to see on the shirt will actually transfer correctly. Because unfortunately, DTG printing is limited and you will not get a one-to-one uh, transplantation of the image you see on your computer screen to your shirt because the
Hmm.
color palette's not that big.
Okay. And so have you ever like ran into the situation where you thought you had like everything on the design like perfect and then you got the shirts and it's just not what it needed to be at all?
Um, I would say so. The original line of these shirts I used a local printer for, and the print it worked, I guess. It was kind of low quality. It looks very faded, and you can see little white flecks of the white shirt in the print, which
Mm.
I'm not really sure how that happens, but it happened and it looked really bad, at least to my standards, because I want to deliver a high quality product.
Right. And so I'm like definitely uh what you would call a noob to this the DTG industry. And so when I think of like printing shirts, one of the first things that comes to mind is like some of the more, I guess, like big box names. It's like Redbubble. What is it like? What's the forget what it was called, but like its mascot is like an octopus kind
Oh,
of
custom ink.
custom ink. Yeah, custom ink. So, what is your opinion on like those kind of I guess like large companies?
I've never used Redbubble, but I can speak for Custom Ink. I know that Custom Ink definitely Custom Ink, the way Custom Ink is so like um convenient is that they have a lot of warehouses around um the country, maybe further beyond, I'm not really sure. But the thing about Custom Ink is that they have pretty decent prices for shirts, but the problem is that the way they print your shirts can be very inconsistent, as in if you have the color red, like
Hmm.
the default color red, like FF000, the reddest red you can get.
That's good.
In one design, it will look good, the other design might look bad. And that just happens pretty much on the whim of some designer out there.
Mm.
And that is not a very good business model, I think, to, have inconsistent colors in fairly fairly simple prints.
Hmm.
I did one DTG print with them. The red looked good. They did one DTG print again, and only like three colors, and the red was like brown. It looked like blood.
Mm.
Whereas the other original shirt had thousands of colors because it was like a edited stock image.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, um, I guess like we talked a lot about the I guess mechanics of t-shirt production. Getting a little bit more into the design. I know I guess this is the other half of the question I first asked you. Um, Using like live models like in the 3D design of your shirt, kind of what like components go into that, right? Like how do you take me from like beginning to finished like design for a shirt?
Okay, beginning to finish design for a shirt. First, I had to think of an idea because I can't make an uninspired art piece. It's a chore.
Hmm.
It's like making a generic beat for a rapper. It just takes a lot of physical effort and it's not fun. You're just doing it to make a bag, pretty
Hmm.
much. So once I come up with an idea, I think about the composition of the shot and how I want it to look. And then once I do that, I think of the type of model I want in my shot. And when I can figure that out, um, I look for different head models of black women, or I ask my friends for front and side profiles. And once I get those, I start actually making the model of the woman
Hmm.
using just standard 3D modeling techniques like using a lot of loop cuts and maintaining good topology, which is essentially a way of like making a 3D model neat so you can um, edit or change things around, make expressions or make it a higher resolution, and it still looks good at any level of resolution where it's like really low or really high. It looks still good because the topology is good,
Hmm.
I guess. So once I get my front and side images, I can model based off the front and side orthographically and with a perspective view. The orthographic lets me set up the basic shape of the head, and the perspective makes me account for depth and proportions of different sides of the head. And then once I make a head, I usually append it to one of my pre-made bodies I made a year ago and pose it like so. And I model some clothes, or I come up with a setting and I model that. Come with a background image or a computer generated background. And then once I get a nice shot, I think about how I can edit it, like bump the colors, add some text, or try to make it just not a rectangle. Because anyone can get a rectangle shirt,
Hmm.
but shirts that maybe have like some little, I don't know, I guess boxing on the edges, or looks kind of like a scanned piece of film where the edges are rounded, like this shirt I'm wearing right now. You
Hmm.
can't see.
I'll
That
put a link
makes
in the description to the shirt.
okay. That makes it stand out more and look more professional than just a box image that you can get at Zoomies or something.
Zoomies. I am actually quite a fan of Zoomies. I think they have a fairly, I guess maybe not the most creative of shirts, but I do appreciate their diversity. There was a pair of camo pants that I saw that they had that I really wanted. I ended up not buying them. I can't remember why. I think I just didn't have the money for it. But I do definitely agree. Kind of, if we talk about some of the more, I guess, metropolitan like clothing outlets, especially those direct towards young adults, like it's kind of either Hot Topic, Zoomies, or Spencer's. Like it's
Yeah.
like the unholy trinity, basically. And I personally, I don't think Hot Topic's selection is very good. A lot of their shirts end up just being like completely black with a, as you said, like a rectangle on the middle of like some
Yeah.
like IP. There's definitely not a lot of like creative depth there. And then Spencer's is pretty much just like weed paraphernalia or breasts. That's, which I mean, to each their own. I'm sure somebody would get like a lot of kick out of that. But when I think about like the clothing that I'd like to wear, typically I go for a little bit more substance. Um, when also talking about I guess like the people facing aspect of this, what were some of the considerations that you had to make when it came to like developing your brand and like getting that out there to like a general public? I know you like your shirts are kind of oriented towards the representation of like black women, but do you also cover like black men or stuff like that?
Well, as far as my art goes, it's mainly focused on black women. I was thinking of doing a black man design later, but that's down the road.
Mm,
But my brand was intended to be shirts that featured black women for black women that I'd be okay with wearing.
mm,
I'm a very, I don't know, masculine kind of male guy, I guess. So with that said, I mean, I design my clothes to be kind of unisex, whereas guys and girls would be okay with wearing it.
mm.
It wouldn't seem like too masculine, like appealing to the male fantasy of a woman, and it wouldn't appeal too feminine that guys would not want to wear it.
Okay, yeah.
So that's something I've really kept in mind when designing my shirts, that I want to make it so that I want to wear it too. And another thing I've been very cognizant of when making my shirts and designing my brand and all that is I really do not ever in any way, shape, or form want to pander
Mm,
just to make it sound like, hey, yo, I like black women too,
right.
like
You
an
don't just
Instagram influencer or
exactly
something.
like stand up for our Nubian queens. Which I mean, yeah, you should, but like,
Or I try to like, watch the words or the text I put on my shirts or the designs I put on my shirts. They don't seem very insincere and like a cash grab, such as, certain convenience stores only playing like black music over their radio systems to make it more convenient
more
and
urban.
urban, yeah, urban for black people to go shop there
Hmm.
when the owners are not black.
Have you kind of in developing your brand look sorry lost my train of thought in terms of like collaboration I guess I imagine that from start to finish is pretty much kind of a one-man band and I'm in a similar situation there like with my podcast I pretty much from recording to editing to post-processing like I'm in charge of everything but in terms of like reaching out to other people for like I guess help kind of or more like to I guess bounce ideas off of um has that ever like come up in your journey with this?
I've asked my friends for feedback on certain designs and the actual modeling itself. I kind of taught myself modeling by making this t-shirt brand because I really wanted to become a 3D modeler. I still do in
Hmm.
my future. So I've been on like Discord and asked, like, sent pictures of my faces and thought, and asked like, hey, is this topology good? Or how does this face look? Or I watched a bunch of YouTube videos on how to like sculpt, I mean, model
Hmm.
ears and eye sockets and mouths and lips. So I can't really say I've looked into collabing,
Hmm.
as I do not know anybody who makes early 2000s, late 90s style 3D designs besides little PlayStation 1 horror ARGs.
It's quite the niche, truth be told. It's definitely a very interesting niche, though, I would say. I
It
think,
is.
like, I mean, me personally, one of the most, like, intriguing social cultural movements ever since like the late 1990s for me is like the Y2K movement. I think like everything around that is just really interesting to just think about and talk about. And especially like the things that came out of it, right? Like we saw like Y2K elements and that futurism disseminate into like all aspects of culture, American and otherwise. For example, Missy Elliott's "I Can't Stand the Rain" video with like the fisheye effect, and the huge like parachute suits, is one of the first things that comes to mind. Or also like Outkast, Andre 3000's, continuously eclectic outfits. I think like his first music video, he had I think it was like he had like a football like training jersey. I don't want to say jersey. It was like a suit kind of. It was like the top half of like a football like uniform, and then I think it was like a skirt or something. Yeah, and it was like how Y2K kind of like pushed the boundaries of like what was like cool and what wasn't. It was definitely like I think the term our contemporaries would use is what it was a reset. And so, kind of, I do definitely want to ask, kind of, seeing as that you're pulling from a similar time frame, is that reset kind of a design ethos that you somewhat align to, especially since you're trying to straddle the balance between your clothes being like not super stereotypically masculine or super stereotypically feminine?
Yes, I do. I would consider myself to be a very, I don't know, feelery kind of guy.
Mm,
I'm not a very aggressive male. I guess I'm relatively more passive.
hmm.
So, with that passiveness and feeling, I try to put a lot of my emotion and just deeper feeling into my fashion. Of course, fashion always needs to be, I think fashion in general is usually like a kind of a reset sort of industry to get into, especially like streetwear. Everything has to be weird or different, or it looks good when something looks unfinished or
Hmm.
halfway done,
Right.
or something looks cut out, or maybe a little blurry in some area, but intentionally blurry.
Like that
Or,
beauty and asymmetry.
yes, yes. Like the simplicity of art where just one small detail or one small diversion from the norm in a piece can make all the difference just by the meaning of that specific diversion
Hmm.
or the significance of how it disrupts the flow of the rest of the piece can be really, it can speak volumes for the art piece itself.
For sure, definitely. It's quite profound. Do you see like the work that you create like on people in the streets? Like, is that something that you visualize?
I can see some people wearing it, yes.
Because I mean, like, you said that you have like sold like a certain amount of shirts, right? And so I guess that actually like is a reality for you.
Yes, my friends bought them, but
Hmm.
yes.
Hey, you got to start small, right?
Yes, sir.
Recording with a friend right now. But yeah, in terms of 3D modeling, kind of talking about how that is, I guess, your passion, quote unquote, quote, calling in life. What kind of like drew you to that?
But it was definitely video game modding. In around 2016, I believe, was the year I first like hacked my Wii, and I got games like Project M, which is a Super Smash Bros. Brawl hack, and newer Super Mario Bros. Wii, another hack for new Super Mario Bros. Wii. I played a bunch of custom homebrew games, which are like games made by random people instead of like a company.
Hmm.
I downloaded different hacks like for Mario Kart Wii and stuff, and I started ripping my games, copying them to a flash drive, and looking through the files and looking at the different 3D model files that were on the discs and playing the Wii games and GameCube games on Dolphin Emulator, which is a way to play Wii or GameCube games on a computer.
Hmm.
And with Dolphin, it's really cool because you can extract like the disk image you take from a disk to like a file system. So you can like run the file system as a disk in Dolphin Emulator. So that makes it really easy to play the game and with like replace files, you can just like take a text file that's the credits and put your name in the text file, and then run the game, and you'll see your name in the text file.
Hmm.
So with that, I decided, hey, I can edit some of these 3D models in these games and put in my own stuff. So I did that for years. Most notably, I would say, for the game Kirby's Return to Dreamland from 2011, I replaced Kirby with Mario from New Super Mario Bros. Wii,
Mm.
with replaced animations and everything
Oh wow.
by doing a very extensive um, model reconstruction in Autodesk 3ds Max and Blender, and finishing it up in Brawlbox, like the editor for proprietary Wii model thought formats. And I had to get a lot of things right with like the bone count and the materials and the textures and the UV maps. It was a lot of work, but I got it done.
Hmm.
And after that, I made um, Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi, all drippy, like wearing Supreme and Off-White, and even Adidas, and they all had like Off-White Jordans. Those took around 20 hours each to make. It's a lot of work. The 3D modeling was minimal, but I learned how to like apply textures and images to um, 3D models and use the UV maps, which is like getting the textures to flow on the 3D geometry correctly. And then I did the materials, which is like what textures are stored in. It's really complicated.
I'd imagine. I was hanging on there, and then you started talking about like Autodesk, and I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. But I think I get the general picture of what you're talking about. And so when you were going through like this labor to get the drippiest characters that Nintendo has ever seen into these games, um, what were some of the resources that you pulled on for that?
Well, the main thing I used was Blender because it's the easiest, I think, 3D um, program there is out there. It really is probably the best open source and free program out there where you can do video editing, VFX, 3D modeling, sculpting, 2D animation. It's really, really, really good.
Oh wow.
I use GIMP, the new image manipulation program, to make my textures and edit the textures, like the images that were going to be shown on a 3D model. That was really good. It's like a free alternative to Photoshop.
Hmm.
Not as good as Photoshop by far, but it gets the job done for little basic applications. Even making images from scratch if you want to
Mm.
paint or, digitally paint. And I used Brawlbox, which is a open source tool on GitHub to edit Wii files. I used the hex editor to look at the direct binary data of the files.
Oh wow.
And I use several other programs on GitHub that you can find just probably looking in Discords for Wii modding or old forum posts because no one uses forums anymore.
Yeah.
But anyways, with all that said, all of that like modeling and stuff made me look at video games in general and how game models are made so that they can convey the most amount of detail and the least amount of actual memory. And that sort of modeling process to making something look real or making all these little triangles move like a human really fascinated me, and it's probably what got me into
Mm.
looking into 3D.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. And so, kind of taking a couple of steps back when you were talking about like the bones of individual models. I guess this also relates to your clothing brand. When you like after the idea phase, like once you start kind of developing for it, I imagine that like most of your 3D models, they don't come from scratch, right? Like, is it, because I mean, like, for my very topical understanding of some of the gutty works of 3D modeling. I've seen people take like a cube and just like turn it into like a capybara or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, is it a similar process to that?
Yeah, it's a cube. I use a cube.
Mm. Right, okay. And so, kind of, I do wonder, actually, and this is like a bit of an off-the-wall question. Have you ever applied some of your digital modeling, like talent, to physical modeling?
Um, I have not. I haven't used any sort of clay modeling tools in a very long time, especially not like recently
Hmm.
or for any sort of real serious modeling attempt. But I am pretty aware of the fact that I cannot really draw that well. I really want to get better, but
Hmm.
most of it has been uh, restricted to only digital because I kind of chose also 3D modeling because I cannot draw very well,
Hmm.
unfortunately. I really want to get better. I'm trying to get better,
Hmm.
but my focus is 3D because I'm good at that.
Yeah, definitely. Can you shed a little more light onto kind of the barrier between digital and physical and like how difficult it is to cross between that?
Well, for me, one of the biggest barriers between digital and physical is I'm actually like drawing something
Hmm.
digitally. I do a better job physically because I have the um, friction of the paper itself, but digitally I have to use a smooth screen.
Hmm.
And there's ways to mitigate that, but I haven't looked into those quite yet. But of course, the easiest thing about digital is that you can just press an undo button and it goes away.
Right.
Where I think also with digital, you have a lot more reference options. Like for paper, pen and paper, or painting, you can have like one of those little posable figures as your reference, or you can have a model, actual human model as a reference. You can use a picture as a reference, or you can put a page underneath your um, medium for reference to trace over, or you can use one of the early camera obscura devices and project the image onto the back of your medium.
Hmm.
Whereas with digital, you can literally just add the image to the back of your 3D medium, I mean, sorry, digital medium, and you can change the opacity of it to see like how intense it shows up in like a background layer of your art. It makes it a lot easier to trace. Of course, you have an undo button so you can easily just, make a mistake and run it back.
Hmm.
And another huge thing is the ability to just copy and paste detail.
Okay. Okay. And so, this is another thing that I like just thought about actually. Are you familiar with the recent movement? I think a lot of it is on like Twitter and whatnot of people generating like AI art.
Yes, I am very knowledgeable of that, yeah.
How do you feel like that impacts kind of the arts conversation as a whole as like we as a society move to more I guess automated processes?
I believe that AI art has a lot of potential, and that's kind of scary for like our world in general because it can make some really amazing stuff.
Hmm.
But the thing about AI is that it's limited by its input, I guess, whereas
Right.
it just can't really very accurately model the human mind. And whereas I can see people using AI for concept art, maybe like some huge studios, I don't believe that any sort of like, I don't believe that concept artists or actual artists will go obsolete anytime soon because AI art has a sense of shallowness to it. It
Hmm.
just looks very plastic and I guess kind of kitschy, like those little, you know, some or Christmas time cozy cottage paintings. Just look
Yeah.
very fake and
Manufactured.
yes, manufactured and just like unabashedly, obnoxiously American.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that AI art has potential. It could have some uses in making just generic assets, but as for actual creativity, it will never surpass that.
Hmm.
Though I can see that bigger businesses might adapt or start using AI to cut down on costs because really, the biggest focus of a business is to make money,
Right.
not the actual art.
Exactly. Especially, I mean, there was that recent hullabaloo with HBO Max. I think they axed a lot of their animated shows that they had the rights to just so they could like save a couple of maybe I think it was like at max maybe $300,000 on their bottom line. If you're familiar.
I did not know that.
Yeah, like I think some like really well-made animated shows had a lot of passion behind it. I think the most notorious one, Infinity Train. One of the only ways to watch it was HBO Max because they had the rights to it, and HBO Max is like, okay, we're just gonna take this show off. And that was like a really big blow to the art world, especially because as we become like more, I wouldn't say reliant, but more cognizant of the capabilities of technology, like media preservation becomes a really huge thing. And then that, of course, goes into the general like piracy debate. Um, uh, and just so we're clear, I am very pro piracy at all times. We should all be stealing from large companies as much as possible. um, but kind of how like technology has both helped and harmed the art world is definitely something that I guess is always going to be a question when it comes to creating fundamentally. And on that subject, I did also want to ask, could you see yourself using AI generated art in your designs?
Um, I was actually thinking about using AI generated art in my designs, but the only way I really want to do that or have thought of doing that is just seeing. I made some different designs. Let me start over.
Hmm.
I do want to use AI generated art for my designs, but in a very abstract kind of way.
Hmm.
Like I've been using, Dolly Mini Ultima's Crayon to make AI images from a text prompt. And some of the images were, of course, they're just like kind of like vague composites of different, you know, prompts
Hmm.
just translated to an image. Some of them very interesting color schemes, and I draw inspiration from that. Just like a nice, like indigo blue sky,
Hmm.
or maybe how I don't know a certain bag of Cheetos looks on a fighter jet or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just the random quote unquote mistakes the AI generator can make have some really interesting color schemes or interesting juxtapositions I would like to emulate. But as far as actually using any like real serious AI artwork, I can't see myself using it. I think it lacks personality, especially me being just
Hmm.
pretty much like a I guess freelance artist.
Right. And also, you were talking about earlier how your personality is kind of just your work, right?
Yes. Being like a freelance artist, using AI art is kind of like it seems to me almost like using a generic beat off of YouTube, where
Hmm.
it just seems soulless and no passion, no ingenuity, only made for convenience and money.
For the bottom line.
Yes.
Right. And so, I guess this is like one of the last couple of questions I'm going to ask you. In terms of like the bottom line, I assume that you're of the thought of mind right now that like no matter what, you will always make sure to preserve your artistic integrity regardless of price tag.
Yes.
Right. Definitely. Do you what advice would you have for other artists and or creators about like when the question of monetization comes up, how did you kind of weather that storm?
Um, I would say that really, if you really want to keep the integrity of your art, but what exactly do you mean by that specifically?
I guess by artistic integrity, I mean fundamentally like being able to exert full and complete creative control over what you make and not having like profit be a motivator to maybe tweak or alter the design in some way,
Hmm,
if that makes sense.
understandable. Well, That's a little difficult for me to speak on
Mm,
because if you're speaking of like, someone, I don't know, getting picked up by a studio to make a movie on some cartoon they made or like some artist being picked up by a label, I don't know if I could very accurately speak on that as I don't really have honestly much desire for a lot of money. If I were to live by myself, I just want to live comfortably. I don't have like a lot of desire for material possessions. My desires in this world are mostly just to gain skill and to do cool things, create cool things. I would say that, hmm,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a big like picture question, right? It's one of those like meaning of life, the answer's 42 kind of things,
yeah,
wherein like there isn't, at least where I'm at right now and what I've learned through my like process of creating the podcast is like there isn't really a good answer to that question. Um
yeah. I
like
was, oh, sorry.
oh no, you're fine. I was just saying that like it's something that is so like because there's so much like around that question, right? Like there's a bunch of like stipulations that you'd have to consider, especially like considering someone's position, and whether or not like their talent is worth a certain amount, and like, well, what exactly is talent worth? Should talent be worth anything? Should anything be worth anything, right? Like it kind of turtles all the way down, like spinballs into like a very large, um non-question almost.
Yeah.
um,
I just think like from person to person, the answer to that question is a very it varies from person to person what the answer to that question would be.
mhm,
But I think a general principle that you could think of when faced with a like that sort of situation where you're wondering if you should, maintain your artistic integrity or not,
mhm,
you should ask yourself, is the money worth my dignity?
mm.
And just figure that out yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know your story, so
Yeah,
I
fair
don't
enough.
wanna I don't wanna pass my judgment on someone's life I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's definitely a nice way to go about it, right? Um,
Yes.
I think it's a Bible passage in Leviticus,
Leviticus.
I think, where it's like look at the examine the plank in your eye before you look at the toothpick in someone
Oh,
else's.
that's in Matthew 7.
That's in Matthew's. Okay. Oof, my bad. I have made my grandmother very angry. But yeah, coming down to the end of the podcast here, I kind of just want to give you some time to plug, I guess, definitely
Okay.
for sure. We've talked about the fact that you own a clothing brand and what's it about, right? But where can we find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram right now. My Instagram is 4C underscore int. That is FOURSEA underscore INT. I have a jot form open if you want to pre-order a shirt,
Hmm.
and to send me a DM if you want to order a shirt just directly.
Hmm.
I would love some shirt models if you want to, show out in the Greensboro area or DMV area when I go back home.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, if you're a good 3D artist and you know the intricacies of old 3D models like ray tracing and having a low poly count and fawn shading and Lambert and all that cool stuff
Hmm.
and rigging and all that, that would be great. Send me I don't know, send me a DM either at 4C underscore int on my personal account, SPEHSSPEA on Instagram. And yeah,
All right, and of course, I will have all of that in a textual format in the description of the YouTube upload. And also, I was wondering, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you this now. Could I use one of your t-shirt designs as the thumbnail for the YouTube upload?
why, of course, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Um, well, I believe I don't have anything else to really say on the topic. Again, thank you so much for your time here. Um, as always, this is the Quixotic topic. Well, actually, wait. It's so weird because like I always come back to the podcast and I'll forget my outro and then I'll remember it as I'm doing it.
Yes.
So, a little bit of a blooper here, but let me try that again. This is DP from the QT signing off.